Welcome, this is Kill a Kitty, and today we're going to talk about two things that a lot of young men need to know at a young age, and the younger you figure it out, the better. So these are two things that took me quite a while to learn. I didn't really understand them that much when I was in my 20s, but one of them is knowing what you are responsible for as a person. Now, I'm a man, and we're going to talk about it through the lens of a guy, but this applies universally for all people. So what do we mean by responsibility? So basically, when it comes down to it, is what do I as a person have control over? Can I control other people's actions? Can I control what they say? No, I can't. I don't have any control on how other people choose to behave. This is really important for a lot of people to understand, because one of the main traits of somebody who's narcissistic or somebody who's got multiple personality disorder is they are going to blame other people for their behavior. This is BS. You are not responsible for anything that anyone else chooses to do. Life is all about choices. We all make decisions on how we are going to conduct ourselves, how we are going to behave. And a lot of us make a lot of mistakes along the way, especially myself. Okay, years and years I went really just making decisions and not fully understanding that I had more control over those decisions than I really gave myself credit for. I was one of those people that thought, oh, it's the way I was raised. It was the way that I grew up. It was because of this person betraying me. This is why I am the way that I am. But you get to an age, you get to a point that if you're honest with yourself, you're going to realize that none of those excuses will hold water. And this, if you're lucky enough to get to this point, is the cusp where you have the opportunity to transcend to a higher level of thinking. Okay? Now, no one else is responsible for your decisions and your choices. Now, could you have been influenced? Of course. We all have external influences depending on our family, depending on our environment, depending on our socioeconomic status. We're going to have different influences. But at the end of the day, each person as an individual is responsible for their own decisions. Okay? So, this has a double-edged sword. On one side, darn, I have to be responsible for my decisions. You have to let the ego go. You have to be able to admit and be honest with yourself. Yes, I did that. No, it was no one else's fault. It wasn't because my ex-girlfriend broke up with me that I did this. It wasn't because my mother or my father treated me this way, or I grew up with drug addiction or any other excuse. Okay? The only thing that matters is how you behave here in the now and in the present. We can look in the past and we can see our mistakes and we can learn from those mistakes. And it's very important, it's vital for us to understand why we chose to behave the way that we did. That is just invaluable information, all right? But there has to come a time where you have to stop and say, from this point forward, I am going to take responsibility for my decisions and my behaviors, all right? And on the other side of that, remember I said it's a double-edged sword. So you have that side, that's difficult. We have another side. Don't allow other people to project their responsibility onto you. Have you ever heard somebody say, well, you hurt me and that's why I said these things? Or because of what you did, I went out and did this. I cheated on you. I did that. I was lonely. My needs weren't met, etc., etc. There are unlimited circumstances people could make excuses to blame their behavior on you. At the end of the day, you are not responsible for their choices. Now, if you did things to them that were not right and that were not correct, you have an obligation to make amends for that. But that doesn't mean that you need to take responsibility for their decisions. You're not forcing them to do anything, okay? Now, with that said, A lot of people in life never move beyond those tricks, those traps. Most people are going to blame everything on everybody else. It is not them, and they don't have a concept of accountability and taking responsibility. But it's vital. If you want to grow as a person, and if you want to transcend to a higher level of thinking, you have to know when you've done stuff wrong, and it's not anybody else's fault. Okay? So with that said, once you do that, what do you do next? And the question, and what you do, really, it's not a question. What you do is you have to listen to yourself, to who you are on the inside. And you have to listen to your intuition. Before you make a decision, you need to think about how you're going to feel about that decision in the future, regardless of what direction you decide to take on that decision. And this requires forethought. All right. It's very difficult to do, and it's impossible for people to do that can't take responsibility. So if I have a weighty decision and I can choose A or I can choose B, I need to think about, how am I going to feel about decision A in the future? And how am I going to feel about decision B in the future? And you need to be able to listen to how you feel and how your intuition is communicating with you. If that line of communication is severed, you're not going to be able to do it, but you can do it, and you have to practice. You have to listen, okay? And you have to dispel those bad habits so that you can listen, all right? So with that said, I'm going to wrap it up, and I hope this can speak to somebody, and I will definitely be seeing you guys again soon, okay? Take care.